Welcome back to Mornings with Joe Catenacci. Yaël Ossowski filling in. On the phone now, we have someone who has been a mentor of mine in my life and who is a very accomplished journalist here in the state of North Carolina. We're speaking with Mr. John Francis Trump. Mr. Trump is the managing editor of the Carolina Journal. For more than 30 years, he has worked as a reporter and editor for newspapers in North Carolina and throughout the country. An Air Force veteran, Trump holds a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Communications from Point Park University in Pittsburgh and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction from Goucher College in Baltimore. His book, which we'll be talking about a lot today, Still and Barrel, Craft Spirits in the Old North State, was released in spring 2017. John and his team they've won a lot of great awards from the North Carolina Press Association and many more. So great to have John on the program. John, thank you for joining us, sir.
Hey, thanks, and thank you for the kind words.
Of course. And since you've been on this station a couple of times, I know Joe has interviewed you. You've been someone that I like to follow. I think everyone should follow your written work at carolinajournal.com. What kind of stuff have you been writing about lately? You follow the movers and the shakers in Raleigh. You kind of follow the media scene. What has piqued your interest of late in North Carolina?
Well, lately, the alcohol talk has slowed down. There's nothing happening. Obviously, they're not in session, and I don't think there's anything on the horizon as far as that goes. I did write a daily journal last week about the newspaper industry. That there has to be. The point was that journalism must stay, but newspapers probably are on their way out. Mm-hmm. It's propping up a dying industry, an industry that's 100 years old. Journalists are hanging on, hoping, but the industry condenses. And I think the point being, it's time to get out. It's time to start something new. It's time to go local ownership. The weekly model would work really well, and I think a lot of people have tried that. But to be everything to everybody newspapers, when you're paying 85% of your cost of print delivery, it doesn't work with the way the internet has gone, and we don't need to walk down that tired old street again. But nonprofit journalism, people like us, the other policy organizations in North Carolina, nonprofit, have done well. And we, like you mentioned, awards. Like we won 7 awards this year. NC Health News wins a lot of awards. NC Policy Watch is always winning awards. And I think that may be an avenue to go. And it's important to keep journalism there. But as far as the newspaper model, we have to let go of that. And I also did a thing about, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and there's been a lot of push lately about unions, both private and public sector unions, teachers unions in particular, and I wrote a little bit of my experience with unions, which Dad was a steelworkers union for 30 years, and teachers were, allowed to strike because they were part of collective bargaining, and I've hit on that lately. Was so away from alcohol that I'm trying to branch out a little bit.
When it comes to what the future of journalism will be, a lot of it has, oriented towards online. A lot of the only major news outlets that seem to be doing very well newspaper-wise are the national ones. There's obviously the New York Times, Washington Post. They've been able, in the age of Trump and democracy that is dying in the darkness, apparently have done very well. Are there other types of models that you see? You mentioned the nonprofit that might be attached to something like a think tank, but are there other models of journalism, maybe direct-to-video or something that seem to be very successful or could be very successful to you?
I think there's still room for the print product. Online, you can get anything you want online, and trying to find a niche there is important. Us, for example, we do the conservative free market think tank, and Policy Watch is on the other side of us, opposite end of the spectrum. But, it's a niche audience, and I think that's important. And I still think there's room for print. I really do. But it's going to have to be type of a weekly, hyper local, rec center news, stuff like that. Watch my kid playing basketball, or watch what's the book of the month at the library. Let's talk about that a little bit. I think probably where this is going to go. We don't cover, I think, to our great credit, we don't cover national news necessarily. We focus on the state. And if you're looking for something that's happening in the legislature, I mean, we're the place to go. Now, as far as funding goes, you have to have a benefactor, and that's the rub, I guess, pretty much with everybody, because the advertising dollars just aren't there online.
Yeah, and one thing that I know Joe, prides himself on in the station is, there is a focus on local news, state news. Really, Joe focuses a lot on New Hanover County and everything that's happening out in Wilmington. But across the state, there are still some reporters who are doing very good, important work at the state level or at the local level. I know with the sale, or I guess the bankruptcy of McClatchy and all of this in the background, that's kind of what you were mentioning before. But I think it's some kind of positive future in that you already have some journalists, very enterprising journalists, who do some good work on the local level. Are there any that you kind of follow in maybe the Raleigh area who you think are kind of sharp, or maybe different outlets that we might not know about in Wilmington that are actually pretty creative and nice stuff in Raleigh?
I look at a lot of there's a new, and I can't name it right now, online outlet in Raleigh that kind of tells you what's happening, what's going on, that type of thing. And I like to even the Indie Week and things like that I pay attention to too, and I delve into the local papers quite a bit. Robesonian and Laurinburg, that they run our stuff, which is great too, because we're kind of a news service, but they run our stuff, and it's good to watch how local journalism functions. It's local. Well, you hit the nail on the head, though. Local journalism is so important. You just have to watch these people, and you know this. I mean, you have to watch the people who have the money, who have holding the purse strings, and that's the danger in all of this. Is if nobody's watching them, well, who knows what they can do.
Exactly.
But yeah, on Twitter, I don't know about anybody in particular, but it pays, and that's another good point too, to get your news. I mean, you can't be, living in a vacuum, of course, or in a tunnel. Have an all-world view of things, even Facebook or whatever it is. Just take it all in as much as you can.
And I wanted to give listeners and point them over to your book. Again, it's Still and Barrel, Craft Spirits in the Old North State. You are kind of taking a nice trip around the state, going to many of the distilleries, the craft distilleries that have popped up. But you also do provide, some good information on the alcohol laws in North Carolina, things that need to change. And you do a lot of this in your writing. You mentioned before it's kind of dead in the legislature, but you got to give us just a little bit of hope. There's got to be something coming down the pike, or something that we can attach ourselves to get some good change, right?
Well, the major thing is, Chuck McGrady of Henderson and Rick Gunn of Alamance County are leaving after the session. So who's going to pick up the guide on? That's the question. I talked with some people from Senator Berger's office the other day, and I've got a couple of names possibly who I know John Hardister, too, has been heavily involved in this. Trying to move this forward. And, as I said, Senator or Representative McGrady had a bill out, 971, that they talked about. It's a private licensure bill, to actually privatize the system and get it straight. And there's a lot of things still they can do. They could do happy hours and Sunday sales and online sales. And I think it's low-hanging fruit that they could take a look at beyond the monster that the ABC is itself, because privatizing that's in our lifetime, I don't know if that's going to happen. But there's like I said, some low hanging fruit they could grab, like Sunday sales for one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that gives us some help. We do need to identify, more people in the legislature who are willing to kind of step up. I was in touch before the primary election with a couple of Democrats from my part of the state around Concord, Charlotte, and a few actually were talking very openly about, trying to liberalize alcohol sales a bit. So, it's catching steam a little bit on the left as well. It seems to have been pushed more so from the right, but it'd be great to see sort of a bipartisan consensus on this.
And I think lawmakers realize that this has to be done. They realize the system is a mess, and it's been a mess for 80 years, because, it was developed 80 years ago. And they did make some moves on, stopping the proliferation of the boards. I mean, there can't be any more ABC boards beyond the 170 that there already are, which is nuts as it is, which is a step in the right direction. But we were in Madison the other day where we used to live, and they got a decent bourbon selection, and we stopped in. We had to run up there for something. We stopped in there, and my parents were with me because they had wanted to visit, and my mother's like, they have other stuff in here? I'm like, no, they don't have anything else in here but liquor. It'd be great because, you can put my book in there. You could put, Cokes and mixers, but no, they have liquor. So, that's another move that could possibly make us expand. It's just so deep and entrenched. It's tough and it's frustrating if you think about it too much.
Exactly. We're speaking with John Francis Trump. He's managing editor at Carolina Journal. We'll point all the listeners over to your book site and to Carolina Journal. Anything else you want to promote while we have you on the program?
No, just, read Carolina Journal. You can log on, get a newsletter every day, keep up with what's happening in the state.